And welcome to the QSO Today Expo. I'm Mike, VA3MW. I'm fortunate to be here with Chris Tate and Sex Whiskey Mike, who is, he just loves RTTY. Chris is also part of one of the alpha member teams with FlexRadio. He's super geek, and he also likes passing on his skills to people like you and I. So, Chris, welcome to the QSO Today Expo.
Thanks, Mike. I'm looking forward to passing on some of this information to the folks here today. Ultimately, we're here to talk about RTTY contesting with the Flex 6000 series radios, which has been a windfall for me. It's really helped simplify the setup and operation of RTTY for me as a competitive radio support operator. So,
Chris, you've been around long enough in RTTY to notice that when we first started, and anybody else, you had a ton of extra hardware you had to go out and buy. And then today that's all changed, where you get to throw all that hardware out, or and try to sell it. In I'll be blunt, the Flex world, where thanks to Cat and DAX, which are the Cat emulator and the sound digital audio exchange tunnel, they've just made life so much easier, less RFI ingestion and stuff. So, how did that go? How did your changeover go?
I remember I'm kind of a late comer into ham radio, so I missed some of the kind of the hardware decoders and all those. There are a couple of very good RTTY operators who still swear by them. But most of the biggest problem that I ran into was the complexity of setting this stuff up. It was, prior to SDR radios. And so the computer was sort of more of a tool for running your logging software and maybe doing some audio and stuff like that. So in order to wire these radios up to have the computer decode and send RTTY, you needed cables for everything. You needed a cable for the incoming audio. You needed a cable for the outgoing audio. You needed a way to set off a PTT trigger. You didn't want to do AFSK, so you wanted to do FSK. So you had to build an FSK cable, and you had to spend a day kind of putting together a little cable to make sure that you could do FSK. It turned out that since you're using all these cables, there were line isolation problems. So there were all these challenges of ways of trying to kind of get it all to work correctly and provide high quality audio, so that the RTTY decoders and encoders could have clean enough audio for you to get through your activity. So,
all right. So next part is we're going to talk about the different types of flex radios, and there's really only two. There's subtle changes. Well, there's a couple of major changes, but your radio either has one spectral capture unit, which is what the antenna connects to, or two spectral capture units, which is what the other antenna connects to, where it sort of really even more so behaves like two unique radios, because we can use two antennas at the same time.
Right.
And Chris, I don't know if you were going to mention this, but I'm going to say something if you're new to Flex, is we in the radio, we actually look at the entire HF spectrum from 30 kilohertz to 54 megahertz 100% of the time. So your virtual receivers or slices have the ability to see any of that spectrum anytime you want.
It's important to understand that if you're working on multiple bands, that you're going to want to be able to transmit on one of those bands while you're listening on the other. And that's really the definition of true SO2R, and the ability to interleave QSOs between the two bands. And that really requires two separate antennas to do. So if you want to do that, you kind of need to use a two spectral capture unit radio. But that doesn't
we call that full duplex, by the way.
Correct.
Right. So it's pretty key. Carry on.
And there's a button down on the bottom of the SmartSDR window and on the Maestro that you enable that feature, so you can listen to the other band while you're transmitting on the other. But it doesn't mean that you need to always have to buy the top of the line radio. You can still do a lot of this this operating with a single spectral capture unit radio. If you have an antenna that happens to work on multiple bands, you can have both those bands up and switch between band A and send a CQ, and between band B and send a CQ. But in that context, you're not going to be able to listen to one band while you're transmitting on the other, and that's because you're using that single chain to make that circuit.
So, Chris, you wanted to talk about SO2V, which was the old school way of doing it, and SO2R on a flex world. And we in the flex world, we always do SO2R, correct? Even if it's a single SCU radio, because N1MM sees it as two unique receivers.
Correct.
Which is a whole lot different than trying to run my ICOM 756 Pro with a sub receiver and trying to make that work, or the Yaesu FT1000D or something like that, right?
So with the traditional with the traditional superhet radio, SO2V really required a high-end radio that had a primary and a sub receiver, and we had to go into the contest logger and make sure that the contest logger specifically supported that mode, and it had its own set of keystrokes and techniques that actually a lot of people learned and were quite successful in using. But with the flex environment, we kind of skipped over that because of the way that the radio architecture works, and the fact that we could spin up virtual radios and actually have them because of the spectral coverage that these radios have. So even with a Flex 6400, we could bring up a portion of say 20 meters, and then bring up another virtual radio, or a slice, depending on how you want to do it, or both, and we can actually be CQing on one frequency while we're using the other radio after we're done with the transmission to look for other multipliers. And so the methodology that we use to operate on two radios on the same band is the same methodology that we use to operate two radios on multiple bands. And whether you do it with a single spectral capture unit and you don't have that full duplex, the listening while you're transmitting, or you have full duplex, you still set it up using the SO2R methodology. And in particular, what we're using is the OTRSP, the Open 2 Radio Switching Protocol, which has its own set of keystrokes and things that you need to learn to operate moving radios back and forth and such. But the point here is that you wouldn't choose the SO2V section in the logger. You would choose the SO2R section, because in essence, you really are using two radios in a flex, even if you're on the same band.
Okay, Chris, other than SmartSDR for Windows, SmartSDR Cat, SmartSDR DAX, there's a few other pieces of software now. I think we've mentioned some of them, but what do you have for us?
Yeah, so obviously we need tools to decode and send RTTY. And a lot of the tools that have been around for a long time are ones that we continue to use. We need a contest logger. N1MM is usually my go-to choice for FlexRadio, and I'll tell you why. There's been a lot of work done to make sure that N1MM integrates with the Flex 6000 platform, and vice versa. So it's one thing to get the logger to see the radio. It's the other thing for the radio to behave in a way that makes the logger work good. So a lot of work's gone into that. And because of that, that's the primary contest logger that I recommend using when doing RTTY contesting with the Flex 6000 series.
You know what? And the crowd support for N1MM is amazing. The documentation is phenomenal. Pretty much I can thank Rich V3KI for that.
Yeah,
it's written in really logical examples. There's been almost nothing I haven't been able to Google and say N1MM keyboard shortcuts for SO2R, right? And that beautiful keyboard map comes up. So.
And a subcomponent of N1MM is N2IC's digital interface, which we use to send and receive, and use a mouse to click and speed us up while we're doing QSOs, SO2R or SO2V in RTTY. So the digital interface is the piece that we use in N1MM to make that all come together. Another thing that I wanted to mention were some of the RTTY applications that we use. The most popular one is MMTTY. And I usually use MMTTY as my core, both for transmit and receive, although some people use other applications. That's the one that actually has had some special attention to make it a little bit flex friendly, and I'll cover that in a minute when I go through doing the setup. But it makes it a lot easier to deal with some of the COM ports and audio ports that we need to choose when we're setting up. So MMTTY is definitely a go-to choice. And if you're new and you're just getting started and you only want to use one, this is the one. This would be the one that you start with. Now, as you get more in depth into contesting and you really want to make lots and lots of QSOs, you start experimenting with different ways of being able to decode more QSOs. And a great application that I use to do that is called two-tone. And two-tone, I believe, is their website is at RTTYcontesting.com. And we use that as an additional, and I actually will set up a series of these using different decode algorithms, so you can improve on the quality of print. I swear to you, Mike, it's very strange how MMTTY will pick stuff up that two-tone doesn't, and two-tone will pick stuff up that MMTTY doesn't. But having all of them running in tandem really gives you an edge on being able to decode RTTY.
And you can run both at the same time. This is where
Yes.
you have to start buying the gaming computer. But
yes, but what's nice is that because of the way that the DAX is set up, it makes it very easy to set up multiple decoders and have them all tie together to really improve the print of RTTY. So,
right. And assuming, by the way, you're watching this on August the 14th. Now we're recording it near the end of July, but in next weekend, because it's like if you're watching us live, August 21st, 22nd is the SART G.
There you go. Yeah, the stuff is. It's like I said. There's always something to operate RTTY in. So there are also other ones. Gritty is another RTTY decoder that's becoming popular. Like Mike said, eventually, if you add too many, it could start affecting your computer's performance. So you need to experiment with what the tolerance of your computer can handle. But Gritty is another popular RTTY decoder that sometimes catches something that the other ones don't.
Gritty is written by Alex V3NEA, who actually doesn't live that far from me. And if you don't know his name or his call sign, if you use CW Skimmer, then you've probably and RTTY Skimmer too.
Yeah, so
you have to try Gritty.
Yeah, it's one that some people, I need to try it a little bit more too. But like I said, I kind of have gotten to the point where I've sort of found the tolerance of the PCs that I operate on, and so I kind of go with a particular configuration. And,
I think Alex writes some pretty powerful, simplistic software, so it's not too confusing.
Yeah.
Right, which I think is really good.
Yeah, these are all.
If you go into MMTTY the first time and you're looking at all the filters and everything, where do I start? So
Yeah.
push the ham button. Push the ham button.
Hopefully, in a minute here, we'll be able to show, get us through that to a point where we're operational and making ready QSOs. So.
All right, so Chris is trial by fire. He's got a brand new clean laptop here, and he's going to install and set up N1MM in an SO2R setup, and it actually works in any model Flex 6000 radio, whether it's a single SCU radio, 6300, 6500, 6600, 6700, right? All right, Chris, so you're ready to go, and I'm gonna pop your screen up here, and you can start talking through things, and I'll widescreen the picture so that we'll just see what you've got.
All right, sounds good.
And here we go. So we've got SmartSDR, CAT, and DAX. Let's assume you know how to get this far.
So you can see that this is kind of a fairly leaned out version of SmartSDR, and in particular SmartSDR CAT, because I wanted to show you all of the ports that we need to set up here in prep for getting our contest logger set up. So what I'm going to go ahead and do initially is set up a new port for each of the two slices. You can see that I've got a slice A on 20 meters and a slice B on 40 meters. This is a Flex 6600. So you can see that I have slice A on antenna 1 and slice B on antenna 2. So we're going to go ahead and add. What we want to do is do this, kind of build our way toward the contest logger. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the appropriate ports, the appropriate COM ports and OTRSP ports. Then we're going to go ahead and set up the directories for the ready decoders, and then we're going to go into N1MM and tie it all together. So let's start by setting up the COM port. So let's go ahead and start with a new port for slice A. So hopefully you can see that, and we'll call it slice A COM. And we're going to use the SO2R mode. So we can take that as a default.
And you'll notice it says VFO slice A. You have to. There's a drop down about halfway
right
that has to say A.
Correct. And then we're going to do another one for slice B. So we're going to call that B, and we're going to say, let's call it slice B COM. And that looks okay. And go ahead and save that.
Yeah, the saving takes about 10 seconds because it has to go create the port within Windows. So,
but we welcome that because we're not going into Windows and creating the ports by ourselves.
Oh my God, yeah. We're not trying to do a VSP by manual method, which is incredibly painful.
Right. And so now we need to add a port that'll allow the contest logger to speak the Open 2 Radio switching protocol language with CAT, so with the radio. So we're going to choose an OTRSP port. Notice it's radio 1 slice A, radio 2 slice B, and then we'll just say OTRSP COM, and then save that one.
And I assume you're going to use push to talk by CAT control?
Yes. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell N1MM to use computer control to put the radio into PTT.
And that's a big change because I'm an old RS-232 guy as well. We used to dedicate an entire communications port for push to talk. Now we don't have to.
Right.
We haven't had to in a long time, but some old school people may still want it. But.
So instead of so here we are. We have slice A on COM 9. We got slice B on COM 10, and we have our OTRSP on COM 11. So we'll come back to that here in just a moment. Okay, so we do need to set up our software that allows us to decode RTTY. I've taken the liberty, and I know Mike flashed on the screen the place where to download some of these applications. I've taken the liberty of downloading and installing MMTTY. And I've also got an instance of two-tone here that's zipped up. So we're going to go ahead and set up the MMTTY sets up by default a directory called ham. And what I usually do is set up all of my decoders in that directory. And so the first thing we want to do is we want to copy our MMTTY, our MMTTY, so we have two incidences of it. So now we have two, and then we're going to label them. And what I do, this is just to make it easy, label 1A and 1B. All right, so we've got two MMTTY directories. Why do we need to do that? These applications weren't originally designed necessarily to have multiple versions running at the same time, but they work. But you have to launch separate incidences of all of them. So we have an MMTTY directory for slice A, and we have an MMTTY directory for slice B, or radio A and radio B. This is also the latest version of two-tone I downloaded, and what I've done here is that I've just put the zip file in there. So we're just going to go ahead and extract it right here. And it opened that up there. And once we have that extracted, we'll just be copying the rest of these. So we'll go ahead and remove that. And
Chris deleted the zip file, by the way.
I did.
In case you missed that.
So now I'm going to.
If you're like me, you've probably turned off the button that says confirm deletion. You sure you want to delete it? And
I'm having copy problems here. Okay.
Do you need 2 copies of two-tone as well?
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, I'm going to up the ante here.
You're going to go to 3, 4.
Okay. So
if I have a 6600, you're going to go to 8?
Hold on one second.
6700?
So we'll label these to make it easier. So what I'm going to do, oops, a little too aggressive there. So we're going to have two-tone decoders on slice A. So A1 and A2. And then we'll just do the same thing for slice B. And we could do more if we wanted to. Generally, I will have, in a competitive contest environment, I will have 3 two-tone decoders and 1 MMTTY decoder per virtual radio per slice.
But we won't go there right now.
We won't go there right now.
Okay.
Now, what I do want to do, though, is I want to quickly set a couple of these up in advance, because once N1MM launches them, you're going to want to have them pre-configured. So I think I already launched MMTTY A. So let's just take a quick look here. Yeah, so it knows at least 2 IM. Okay. And then we'll go
what were you looking for there, Chris?
What happens was when you do the install, it wants to ask you for your call sign.
Oh yeah.
You know, all that stuff. So I like to set that all up in advance. So in fact, we should get a real this one here. It's going to do the same thing. Yes. Okay. All right. So and then we're going to want to set up the appropriate audio ports on these. So I'm going to real quick I wanted to show everybody this.
This is an important screen.
This is really complex looking. And you look at this and you go, how do I find anything? Well, a friend of mine actually got his hands on the source code for this. I believe it was Stu, K6TU. And he actually wrote, he set this up to make it easier on the rest of us by hiding all of the extra DAX audio ports and making it easier to find what you need.
Right. Let me jump in. So if you look in your Windows control panel, you'll see more audio ports than you know what to do with. You want to ignore, no matter what you're doing, anyone that says reserved. And I think, by the way, if we had a way to hide them, we probably would, but we can't. So Stu, very smart guy as well, had this little, I noticed this one day. I went, that's really handy. So carry on, Chris. You'll notice that you want to toggle it one more time. You'll notice there's a whole bunch of ports, and they have the name reserved.
You can't even see them all. There's not enough room for them.
Yeah.
And you do that, and it's like all of a sudden, oh, wait, okay. So we're working with the slice B. So we're going to make this one DAX Audio RX2, and for listening and transmit, it will be the DAX Audio TX. Let's see how that works for us.
And the transmit one is always DAX Audio TX on every program.
Oh yeah, and then I should probably give us a
DAX 2 there.
Give us a DAX 2, and so there you go. So you could see that it's already set up because we're using the RTTY section in SmartSDR, that the filtration's already set up. Looks good. So we're going to do that again really quick, just so for those of you who missed it. So that one is good to go.
And you're going to repeat it on the other.
And we're going to repeat it really quick, maybe a little faster on the other one. So
I'll just delete that. I'll just delete that part, but we're going to do the same thing all over again, except we're going to say, well, I'll tell you what, we'll leave it in.
Okay. And so now we're going to go and sound card, hide, X Audio RX1, X Audio TX. Okay. And that one's ready to go.
And you're on version 1.70K.
Which I believe is the latest.
Yes, I think it is.
Okay. And then we want to do the same thing with our two tones, but we don't have to worry about the transmit. All we have to do is worry about the decodes. So let's go to two tone. And actually,
so does that mean you're always going to transmit using the MTTY engine? Correct.
That's correct. That is correct. That's if you choose that path, and that's the way we're showing you today. That's going to be your transmitter is going to be MTTY. So if you need to tweak anything, that's the section that's the application you're going to tweak it in. But so far, it shouldn't require too much. There may be a few little tricks that I'll show you once we get it up in N1MM. Two-tone. Two-tone 64, if you have a computer that supports it, use the 64-bit one. If you don't, then you can go ahead and run the 32-bit binary and it'll be fine. What am I missing here? Oh, okay. We can cut that part out.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna
we'll just ignore the two-tone part.
We're gonna have to handle two-tone through N1MM, I guess. So, okay. All right. So we've got all of our COM ports set up. We've got our DAX ports set up. We've gone through and done our prep work with our two incidents of MMTTY. And once we get the two tones up in N1MM, we'll do some tweaking there. So let's move on and start N1MM. This is, again, a very clean version of N1MM, not completely clean. I've gone ahead and set up my call sign and my grid square and my ARRL section. But otherwise, this is a completely clean version of N1MM. And we don't need the log window right now. So let's go ahead and get this set up so it's talking to the FlexRadio, and then we'll move on to set it up to work with the digital decode. All right. So here we are in the N1MM configurer. We're going to go ahead and, if you recall, we set up slice A as COM9. So let's go ahead and choose COM9, radio, Flex 6000 series. And we'll get back to this part here in a moment. We're going to go to set and go ahead and accept the recommended Flex settings. N8, 1, always off, always off. And this is radio 1. And remember we were talking about the PTT via command. And I just do this by default. But notice that we've to PTT by command by digital radio mode. That's going to actually key the transmit for the radio.
Yeah, I want to say something here since you've got it up. If you've worked with this before, this makes perfect sense. If you've never seen this before, it's confusing as heck. The top line says enable both hardware and software push-to-talk. And by hardware, they mean you've created a dedicated port in SmartSDR for CAT, and it will say P for push-to-talk. Well, we don't have any of those, so we're not using hardware. And when it says software push-to-talk, it's about sending a radio command, a CAT command to the radio. And then that's where the bottom 3 come in place. So if you don't check, say, the SSB one later in another contest, and you play the voice keyer in N1MM to call CQ contests, the radio will not go on transmit.
Right.
And the same thing true for CW actually, or a little less critical because there's many ways to put the radio into transmit. We're now sort of going down the path of saying, hey, we'll just got a really reliable computer CAT control, so we'll do push to talk radio via SSB CW in digital mode.
Right. Okay, so let's keep going here.
That's radio 1.
That's radio 1 on COM9. Now we're gonna go into
which will be slice A, right?
That's correct. Slice A, radio 1, COM9. Now we're gonna select this SO2R because we're moving on to a second radio here, which is on COM10.
And by the way, regardless of which 6000 series radio you're using, it will be SO2R, not SO2V.
Correct. Don't choose SO2V. It will lead you down a path of confusion.
Off and off. And radio number 2.
And boom. Now,
and if you happen to pick one, radio 1, it'll tell you you made a mistake.
Yes, it will yell at you. And now we're going to set up a sort of a CW other port here. On COM11, remember we set up that OTRSP port.
Yeah, and OTRSP handles your audio and what you hear, either mono or stereo, depending on your receivers. It's the beautiful part of this.
And it allows you to use the keystrokes for the Open2 radio protocol to move back and forth. So we're going to tell it, we're going to use the OTRSP protocol there. And the radios that are involved are both. And we're just going to accept those as the defaults. And
by the way, I digress for a minute. If you happen to be doing a win keyer and you'd set up a W in SmartSDR CAT, this is the same procedure for setting up win keyer.
Yeah, this
Not
is
for
good.
An RTTY contest.
This is good SO2R setup primer for N1MM as well. Okay, so you see it's given us two windows to operate. Now we're going to set up the digital portion of this. And of course, we can make these, we can put band maps up for each of them. I noticed that I launched a band map and it created one for each of the 2 radios, 20 and 40 meters. So anyway, all right, so that all works. And by the way, I don't know if you could see this, but here I am using the pause break command, which is the switch between 2 radios. And I don't know if you look close.
The pause break key.
Yeah, the pause break key is switching between 20 and 40 meters, and look at the
Watch
smart.
watch the TX flag, and you'll see it change from A to B.
Correct. So it's all working. So the two radio protocols working. All right. So now let's go ahead and set up our digital interface. Let's go back into the configurator, and let's go to digital modes. And we're going to quickly set up our digital modes here. Sound card. These are both going to be sound card, by the way. So let's start with digital interface 1. Select. And we want to select initially our MMTTY. So we're going to open that. And then we're also going to do the same thing for our second digital, but this can get a little confusing, but we want to go up a level, go to MMTTYB, so we have two separate ones, right? So you can look at the paths, they're different, right? Because you need to have individual paths for each of these. And when I say okay, this
hold on.
show.
And we're using audio frequency shift keying because we don't have FSK.
Yeah.
Don't let that worry you. Both are equally as clean in today's world.
Right. We're accepting the defaults right now, which is AFSK. So we'll say OK. And we may see what happens when I do that. There we go.
So Chris typed in RTTY to change mode. He typed that in on the logging window, which is one of the cool things about N1MM is designed to not really have to take your fingers off the keyboard.
Yep. I'm trying to keep this as clean as I can for everybody here. But you could see that it brought up two separate digital entry windows and that we have two separate instances of MMTTY running, one for each of these DI windows. You can adjust them to make them, the right size for you, which I'm trying to do here. Let's make that one a little smaller. Make that one a little smaller. Okay. All right. So right now, let's just see real quick. There's no really, well, there might be some going on here. Sorry, it's worth, yeah. So there you can see it's decoding. So that the MMTTY on 40 meters is actually decoding RTTY right now. It's not a very strong signal, but it's working. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and set up additional DI windows. Let's start with the slice A. Add an RX window.
So you're now in
you're
in the digital interface window. I get it. Yep.
Yes, but when we go to RTTY mode, it automatically pops up the digital interface window. So now we're going to go ahead and add additional decoders, which you kind of need to tell N1MM that you're going to be using additional decoders. So let's go add RX windows, open additional RX window, window type. Let's see here. Let's choose two-tone. And notice that there are various different decoders that you could choose here. And then we're going to select our two-tone. Here it popped us back into A1, two-tone 64, open. And let's select this, save. And I think we'll stick on we'll just do one per slice, Mike.
Right.
Okay. For brevity here. Okay, so now two tones running, and we just need to set it up so we're listening to the right stuff here. So let's quickly go to settings. And this one is for slice A.
Right. So you need RX1, right?
Yeah, and unfortunately, this one doesn't have the hiding hiding that MMTTY does. And you could see that the mark is 2125, which is the default mark for a FlexRadio. So if you want to change that, you'll need to look up how to change the mark and space frequency on your FlexRadio and on your decoder. That goes for MMTTY as well. Okay. So now we got a second decoder there. And I will show you a trick. So there is actually a way to nest these digital interface windows into this one. And we're going to do that, but not until we're done setting up our decoders. It's just a quirk of N1MM. If you don't do it that way, it can get a little bit confusing. So let's quickly go ahead and set up the 40 meter second decoder.
And again, we select the second copy.
The second copy, correct. Now, what would happen if you selected the first copy is you'd be listening to the wrong slice.
You can close that zoom window on top.
Okay. And then let's go ahead and save that. So now that's going to do its little thing. And there is our DI2. So we'll bring that over here and we'll just quickly set it up for the other DAX channel. Settings. Boy, got a lot of windows open here. Audio. RX2. And okay. And that one's looking good too. Now that the grand finale is to enable attached RX windows. So this is going to nest all these extra windows that popped up. This will nest them all together. So let's go ahead and do that. That one worked pretty good. And there we go.
So we have a primary and a secondary in the same window. That's cool.
Right. So what that does is that nests all of the digital interface decoders together, and allows you to use your mouse or your keyboard to click on decoded call signs and such, so you could capture them and send with them.
Okay. So how come we're not seeing anything printing in the top one? Are we not listening to the same VFO on both of them?
No, we are. But the sensitivity is different between the different decoders.
I got it.
And the one thing I did want to mention is that two-tone has lots of different algorithms too. Notice spread, selective, flutter. And I will have all of those, a version of those on all of those algorithms running at the same time. Sorry about that.
By the way, if you really wanted to and get carried away, you could actually install two-tone or MMTTY on a second whole computer. Just start SmartSDR Cat and DAX, and just maybe you just had it in a whole other window on another computer for a second set of eyes to look at part of the way the radio is designed. And that doesn't use any slices if you're listening to the same thing.
Yeah.
Because you don't need to start SmartSDR for Windows in the second computer.
So at this point, this is ready to operate RTTY, with the exception of we would need to load a contest, and we would need to load and I would, I'd have to point you to N1MM to make sure that you load the appropriate contest and the right contest macros so you could send and receive RTTY.
Wow. And it's working.
It's working. It's running right now. So good. Let's
Oh,
see.
we'll go back to it. Chris can't see us actually because of it's a
Okay.
single computer monitor. But so Chris, come on back up and you can shrink that down. And oh, you blew us away. Well, that's amazing, Chris. And I think the one thing I want to say is we really don't have a document written up to do this. And maybe Chris, you and I can do this again in a much slower rate on a different chat someday. And
Yeah.
as well, but that's really great. And if anybody wants to reach out to you, is there any good way we can ping you? Is it your QRZ
Yeah.
address?
I expect that this is probably for a lot of people can be overwhelming. It gets really easy really quick, believe me. But you can always feel free to contact me at chris.tate@gmail.com.
Okay, and I'll put that up on the screen when I post edit this.
And I'd be happy to answer your questions. You can contact me on the Flex community. I'm available out there as well. And
the community is the better way to go too, because you may be asking a question that 9 other people want to know, and it's easy to share and collaborate.
Right,
that information.
I strongly encourage people to do this in the community.
Yeah, the community is community.flexradio.com.
Awesome.
It's got really good people on that group as well.
Yes, and a lot of very smart minds, and a lot of people that do this all the time. There's not just me that's a RTTY enthusiast. There are lots of RTTY enthusiasts out there that are also on the Alpha team that may be able to answer questions for you and help you.
And we have them tagged accordingly as an Elmer. And I guess I'll check and see if you're an Elmer. If not, I'll get you upgraded tomorrow. And Chris lost a lot of status points. We all had to start at the beginning when we changed over to the new community. But we've gone back and moved people like Chris, Dave WO2X, and a couple of others. So if you see Elmer on the community, you can trust what they say. They generally know what they're talking about, but every once in a while, we get a little bit out of line too. So if you think we're wrong, challenge us.
Yeah, and they do.
And we do. And please don't be afraid to challenge people. If somebody says just do this, and you need to know more, ask, explain more. We're all about mentoring and teaching, not just how do I make it go red or blue? We're going to explain why you want to do whatever, but try to give you a bit more details. So Facebook. Well, Chris, thank you very much. I'm sure that's going to be very helpful for a bunch of people.
No problem, Mike. And hope we can do it again sometime. And I appreciate it.
Okay. 73, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the QSO. A lot of great talks, and we have a lot of good people too. And I'm sure you picked up a few more pointers. I think you've got about a month to look at it. And after that, we'll move them over to our YouTube channel as well. So 73.
Goodbye, everybody. So did you guys get a chance to look over the presentation at all, or
just saw your video?
Okay, great. So there's probably some questions. It's really something that you kind of need to. I'm hoping that the video is available, and I think it is available to people for a bit of time. I think that what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with Mike Walker to create some more elaborate instructional videos that are a little bit where we could spend some time and drill down on some of this stuff so it becomes easier to set up. Took a long time to figure out a lot of this stuff, but of course passing it on like this is the best way. So does anybody have any questions in this group?
I don't really have a question, Chris, but it will be nice to be able to start and stop the presentation while I try and get things set up. That should make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think you should be able to do it. You should be able to at least use this presentation to give you a core setup. Now, like I said, I'll talk to Mike, and I think there's a lot. They've already done a bunch of videos to make it easier to interface stuff with flex radios and stuff like that. But I think this subject needs some very particular attention. So I think that what we'll do is we'll also create a new series of videos that kind of dial, like a basic. This is a basic one slice RTTY setup, and this is what you can use to make QSOs. And then we can take it from there and go into more elaborate contest setups and using multiple radios and stuff like that, or using 2 radios on 1 band. That kind of stuff can get a little bit confusing with the flex radio because it is different from your super het radios in the past. It's quite a bit different.
I started out making notes as you were doing your presentation, and I tossed those. I figured, okay, I'm going to stop that video.
Yeah,
when it comes out.
Yeah, it's complex enough, and that's kind of why I wanted to do it. It was actually a big undertaking. I was supposed to be cut to 30 minutes, and so I realized that if I did 30 minutes, that I wouldn't be able to do that. But I thought it was really important to go through that setup routine, because I think that setup routine is something that kind of is an obstacle that people may find, especially if you're trying to kind of get set up really quickly before a contest or something like that, and to make some contacts. So hopefully it's helpful.
Let me ask you a chicken or egg question.
Okay.
Your presentation is based on N1MM.
Yes.
So if you're interested in doing RTTY, know absolutely nothing about N1MM, do you have to learn N1MM before trying to do RTTY?
Well, I would say at least a little bit, enough to get you to the RTTY operation screen. But once you're there at the RTTY operation screen, you can actually manage a series of QSOs by using nothing but your mouse. So, there are, you need to be somewhat accustomed to N1MM just to understand, okay, that logged okay, right? That QSO logged properly to your log. So you need to know a little bit, right? But you don't need to be an expert at the underpinnings of N1MM in order to operate it. If you use a mode which is called enter sends message, which is basically uses the enter key to go through the flow of a QSO exchange. And we can actually tell the digital interface to use the right mouse button to equal the enter key. So you can click on a QSO, which will populate a call sign into the logger, and then you can hit the right mouse button to enter the next step in the QSO chain. So so when this is flowing really smoothly, you will find yourself clicking with your left mouse button, and then clicking with your right mouse button, and then clicking with your left mouse button, and that finishes the QSO. So really is a neat, and it really is efficient. People that hate contest QSOs and say, boy, there wasn't much meat to that QSO. Well, no, there really isn't that much meat to that QSO, but it works, and it works very, very well. And every year I do the ARRL RTTY Roundup. I've won the Pacific Division five years in the last 5 of the last 10 years. And that's what I'm doing. I'm using my left mouse button to click on the QSO and the right mouse button to carry my flow through the QSO. So the answer is yes, a little bit. My opinion would be yes, you need to learn it a little bit, but you don't need to be an expert.
This is Dave, KC90.
Hey,
Some people like myself, I know quite a few of the operators around here, flex operators, that we're pretty much wrapped around the N3 FJP. And So it seems, we're not going to throw that away, obviously, but I was just going to suggest kind of when you do your procedure, if you can kind of keep that in mind a little bit, if possible.
I'll tell you, there's a reason why I went down the road I did. I'm familiar with N3FJP software. There are also other contest loggers out there, WinTest, WriteLog. There are many different types, and a lot of them will work with the FlexRadio pretty seamlessly. I'm not sure how well the N3FJP manages the digital interface to the FlexRadio. I'm not sure how well it does. I know that he works quite a bit on it, so he may have made some improvements. So I will definitely take a look.
It does pretty good, but probably the number one thing, in my opinion, is when I'm looking and I'm decoding and I see that call sign there, I really don't want to have to click, copy, paste. It's like you're talking about here. And I guess I don't. That's the one thing that's probably missing. Is that what you've seen in the past?
So it's that integration which it gives me the ability to work 200 and 300 QSO per hour rate.
Yeah,
because all I have to do is click and it auto populates. Then I right click and it sends the exchange. And then I click again and it auto populates his exchange. And then I right click and it says thank you N6WMCQ.
So would you basically, if I'm understanding what you're saying but not saying, is that, well, look, if you're going to do a contest, you probably want to use the N1MM for the contest to learn how to use it for contest and then get back on the life on the other side, outside the contest. Is that fair?
Here's the little twist. Contest loggers tend to be, I don't know. You know how kind of hams get very, very passionate about certain subjects? Well, contest loggers are one of them. And the reason is people spend many, many years trying to figure out all the keystrokes to be as efficient as they can with their contest logger of choice. So people are really, tough to make a change. It's difficult to change to a new contest logger. When it comes to RTTY contesting, there's really kind of two popular contest logs that are the most well accepted. N1MM is one of them, and the other one is called WriteLog. N1MM happens to cost nothing, and WriteLog has a fee associated with it. But WriteLog was actually originally written specifically for RTTY contesting.
Well, thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Chris, Enda EI2II, thanks for the presentation. It was great. Just it's more a flex question than a RTTY question, but you're on your slice A is on 20 meters working away, your slice B was on 40. Mm-hmm. So you suddenly changed slice B to 10 meters. Do you have your radio set up for slice B on antenna 2?
Yes.
And if so, how do you keep it from going all over the place when you keep changing? So you switch to 10 meters on slice B. How do you get the antenna selection to follow that? Slice B will always stay on antenna 2.
Okay. So that's done through something called profiles. And the way that when I very first when you get a clean flex radio, you kind of need to tell it how your station is configured. So you need to go in and you need to set up transmit profiles that match what your antenna and amplifier configuration, for instance, is set up for. So in the case of this video, I did it here at my house. In my house, I have a 2-element frequency agile antenna, so a stepper antenna, and then I have also a vertical in the yard, that does 40 and 80, and another vertical that does 160. So I set up a profile for slice A that kind of handles all of the upper bands, because that antenna is where I do my upper band work. So the 10, 15, and 20 at this station, 10, 15, and 20 is going to be slice A, and then 40 meters is going to be slice B, 80 meters is going to be slice B, and 160 meters is going to be slice B. So that way, in that case, as you could tell, I can't do 10 meters and 15 meters SO2R at the same time from this little pistol station, because I've assigned them all that. Now, when I'm at the N6RO station, where I have stacked monobanders on all bands, I have chosen sort of the slice A and B to designate, for the most part, what I'm going to be doing on each one. So on slice A, I would do 20, 40, 80, and 10, 20, 40, and 80. And slice B, I would do 15, 15, 80, 160, or something along that lines, so that I can have the maximum coverage of bands available to me simultaneously. So I can call CQ on one band while I'm listening to QSOs on the other band. And that's all handled through profiles. So you have to go through and set up the profiles.
Yeah, so I suppose to give you a little background, I'd have something like, let's say, a Force 12 5BA. I have 3 bands, 3 contest bands on that one antenna with 3 cables. So I could be, and I suppose maybe what you're not doing, like your slice A is your run and your slice B is your kind of search and pounce.
Yeah.
You're literally dedicating a slice, irregardless of, your major run could be on 40 or your major run could be on 20. You don't distinguish.
Yeah. And you could also have your run and your search and pounce on the same band.
Yeah.
On the same antenna. Or on different antennas if you have 2 antennas for the same band with the appropriate separation.
And can you tell N1MM to point to a profile if it's changing a band?
So what you do is you set the profiles up on the SmartSDR and the Flex.
Yeah.
And so when you select a band, it's going to select that profile.
Okay.
And so that will be persistent.
That's one for your future, right? So is be able to tell N1MM which profile to pick when it moves band.
Yeah, and you'll see that it actually works relatively well if you go through and set up all the profiles for like your slice A, and then set up all the profiles for your slice B. And once they've been assigned, the next time you go to slice B, it's going to be the slice B profile. And you click on slice A, it'll select the slice A profile, and they'll switch back and forth. And that also sets off a number of other triggers that are, probably a little bit out of scope of this conversation, but things like TX, RCA ports and stuff like that, they're all part of that transmit profile. So if you remember, you're going to be keying 2 different amps too, right? So you're going to have 2 different amplifiers you need to key. So one may be keyed off of TXA or TX1, and another one may be keyed off of TX2. And each profile needs to be set up to key the right amplifier.
I have to buy the next amp. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, Chris, quick question.
Yes, sir.
I noticed that when you set up that you used MMTDY for transmit, could you equally have done that through two-tone?
Yeah, you can. You can do it through two-tone. You can do it through of any assortment. I think I mentioned that is that I always kind of start with MMTTY because it's for 2 reasons. 1, it's been around for a long time and I've become very comfortable with it. 2, because of that little port hiding piece that I showed in the video, that K6TU designed it so you can hide all of the extraneous ports and you're not spending half an hour digging through trying to find what port you want to assign to it. It's a little frustrating, to be honest. And that was a huge step forward. So I usually use that, and the transmits always worked well for me. And then I use the 2 tones as multiple decoders with the multiple algorithms. So, and like I mentioned in the video, sometimes you'll see something come across on one of those 2 tones, and you go, what? And sure enough, it turns out to be a QSO that you would not have had if you just used MMTTY. So the answer is yes, you can set any number of those up to transmit, whichever one is your preferred, transmit application.
Yeah, thanks a bunch. I've just been simplifying my setup, and I just got rid of MMTTY and just used two-tone exclusively for everything with my K3. And I was hoping I could do that with the Flex.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem whatsoever. And it'll also give Gritty a look. That's one. Gritty is really interesting. It seems to decode quite a bit of stuff, but it also is very resource intensive. So.
Yeah, I am using GRIDDY for one of my secondary receivers.
Yeah, that's a great application. Anything else from anybody? Okay, well, cool. Well, thanks. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch the video. And like I said, I'll make a point to actually create specific FlexRadio videos for RTTY setup, and maybe we'll dive into even some of those other decoders like Gritty and stuff like that, so we can offer easy ways to get that set up for you all. I appreciate it, and thanks. Have a great remainder of your weekend, everybody.
Well, thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks a bunch.